The game was totally flipped. Camron turned it upside down. Jim benevolently departed following this startling release. Chrissy was left looking furious. For justifications, fans can't believe it. The consequences could be the most fierce, but the streets are humming. Let's look at what actually happened. The streets of Harlem were busy, but not in the usual way. Explanations? It had nothing to do with a rap feud. Leakage of a fresh mixtape onto the block release, or even a style declaration. This time's comments' main topic, Side Camron, a male exchanged looks and whispers, who had established himself as a Bayon flair and lyrical skill. But furthermore, on his audacity in saying what others wouldn't. Furthermore, Camron's decision to release into the populace was eruptive, and never just rumors. This time, his leak wasn't just a playful comment regarding the sector. It was personal. It was unkind. Chrissy was severely harmed by it. According to Lampkin, Jim Jones was, "I can't ignore it." The sector was shocked at Camron's revelation. The Harlem-based rapper, who is well known for his icy demeanor and the heritage of prominent diplomats, had long been unclear in relation to Jim Jones. They had built an empire together. However, over time, as they made an effort to repair the injuries, they witnessed it disintegrate because of egos, disputes over money, and loyalty issues. Therefore, it wasn't a clumsy action when Cam showed his shocking disclosure. It was planned. It was like opening a wound that was open. The spill was more than just an insult or a mysterious Instagram Live comment track. Cam presented concrete evidence. Video receipts and recordings that introduced Chrissy to the world in the most detrimental manner possible. Reports state that the video showed Chrissy in private places that ran contrary to the image she had tried to create hip-hop and love project. Chrissy had been years. This strong jerk is alongside Jim fighting for their relationship, for her personal autonomy, and for Mama Jones, his mother, to respect her. But the data that became public disclosed a distinct image. One where Chrissy was the one who had secrets instead of the victim. The internet took off immediately. Away fans who had invested over 10 years after the story of Jim and Chrissy. We were surprised. Within a few hours, memes started to proliferate. The statement Instagram parts turned into complete battlefields, and rumors bloggers were having a great time. There was chaos involving Team Jim, Team Chrissy, as well as Team Cam. Some people felt sorry for Chrissy, asserting that Cam had broken the bro code by going too far. Code by handling his personal matters, the general public. Others argued that Chrissy had it was anticipated and that she had participated in dangerous actions while in the public eye. Too long, karma had finally managed to up. Chrissy, nevertheless, wasn't the one who was most severely hit. Jim Jones was the one. Jim had defended Chrissy for years against the world. He was supporting her following their relationship. Mama Jones openly denounced it. He had attempted to achieve equilibrium between his love for his girlfriend and as well as his dipshit brothers to prove that Chrissy was his pillar of support, as well as the writing door. He had given up relationships and financial opportunities. But now Jim was in the worst circumstances of his life because of Cam's revelation. Besides his brother-in-arms exposing his woman, the entire business was watching how he responded. Even if the proof seemed to be negative, would he stand up for Chrissy? Would he finally depart or return? The relationship he shared so frantically attempted to maintain. It was tumultuous behind the scenes. As stated by additional people near the nuptials, there was many arguments at Jim and Chrissy's home. Reports state that Chrissy weeping, she emphasized that Cam's leak was fabricated, exaggerated, or unconnected. Up, she begged Jim not to reveal anything. They made it out of Camron's bitterness. But this time, Jim was not easily convinced. He had been in conditions for years when his Chrissy's devotion cost him connections with other individuals. Now seeing Cam utilize their own lives as a weapon, Jim was unable to remove the believed that maybe, just maybe, he had been made fun of by his lengthy spouse. Meanwhile, Camron stayed composed. He was subtle and made jokes, messages, and provided citations on social media that if somebody tried to, if you came up to him, he would have more to disclose. Cam was constantly such as that. Never be weak or give in. And never let anyone tell you what to do. Narrative, the cause of his first leak. The data was the subject of a lot of conversation amongst supporters. Was it revenge for unresolved issues? Was it since Jim and Cam had made an effort to reunited but had become estranged once more? Or did Cam just act like Cam? Enjoys controversy and chaos. But the impact was undeniable. Jim Jones couldn't manage to go outside without any muttering sounds about Chrissy. The atmosphere even shifted. At events for the sector, now he was visible as royalty in Harlem by those who had thought of him as such before. His arrogance was harmed, and Jim wasn't someone who, a man asks, is that what Cam said? True, to put up with rudeness, especially in a public setting, when Jim and the cameras weren't recording. Chrissy's strain became unbearable. Point, long pauses turned cold. Distance and lengthy arguments quiet. Reports state that Jim started staying away from house, looking after former pals, and questioning whether the lady he had devoted nearly 2 decades of his life to was well worth the trouble. Chrissy felt duped by Camron, as well as by Jim's hesitation as well. She had fought for years. She showed her loyalty. It seems like everything was undone with just one spill. Admirers who had matured with love and hip-hop. It was unbelievable what they were seeing. This wasn't no longer just a reality TV drama. It was pure and unadulterated existence. Chrissy had consistently wished for a happy ending with Jim, full of through matrimony. For the first time, but Jim didn't just counter the argument. Rather, he departed, creating that illusion. Seem even more unlikely. Insiders stated as much. In any case, Jim supposedly spent some time away from their home, days after the disclosure, and failed to answer Chrissy's phone calls. During periods such as silence was more potent in this situation than remarks, and the man who had earlier defended her in front of his mom, his pals and hip-hop as a whole, suddenly, industry was silent. The disclosure had achieved more than simply damaging the already precarious foundation of a collaboration. The partnership between Chrissy and Jim is now unsalvageable, but the one with Jim and Cam could not be saved. Fans questioned whether this was Chrissy's final straw. And Jim, during the Harlem industry, observed OHR, or would they begin in some way? More than they have in the past. It was Camron's shocking revelation was evident. Was not just an account. It was a crucial period. A period when pride, love, and dedication clashed in the most obvious way possible. The world understood this drama was far away from finished following Jim Jones' departure. Harlem they would have been wrong to assume that the storm's culmination was the leak. The drama was only beginning. The disclosure was the actual first section of this narrative. It's unavoidable and rude. Section 2, but address the consequences, the responses, as well as the consequences that went well beyond Chrissy, Jim, and Cam. 3 people were no longer the only problem in this case. It became a performance, a catchy title that grabbed attention of Mama Jones's colleagues in the field. Additionally, for over a decade, Jim and Chrissy's tale has captured the attention of millions of supporters. Mama Jones was the source of the beginning resonance. She had never been the biggest admirer of Chrissy, as anyone who ever has seen hip-hop and love could tell me. Mother Jones resembled Chrissy from initially. She kept her kid under control, affecting him and bringing about to distance himself from his family. Even a diss tune was released by Mama Jones about Chrissy once, and their battles were legendary. Mama Jones didn't remain silent when Cam told you the secret. On Instagram, Mama Jones lost her mind. Live. Even though she didn't expressly bring up Chrissy, she made it obvious. Remarks to which she was alluding, for some folks, have been awakening for years. Masks, they adore the things you bring with you, despite your belief that they love you. The truth always comes out, so don't, when it does, my dear, cry. Admirers flooded the comments right away with fresh Mama Jones remarks, happy faces, as well as flames. It was Chrissy's dagger chest. along with her personal publicizing her affairs. Her largest detractor, her boyfriend's mother, was praising her out of the blue. Jim's death, however, Jones remained remarkably quiet in the general public. Jim is known for defending Chrissy regardless of the cost years. But his lack of response was deafening following the disclosure. His next action was the focus of conjecture among fans. Would he give Camron his customary clapback? Would he make a declaration defending Chrissy? Or had he been at last, so Cam broke the news that he no longer possessed the strength to protect his relationship? Jim, according to insiders, was conflicted behind the scenes. He was deeply affectionate for Chrissy, and she wasn't just a Morris companion. He had proven his living with her as a friend. She had keeping him afloat during challenging economic times, at the peaks and valleys of his professional life, and while everybody else appeared to desert him but heckled, however. Disregards what the world had seen, Cam. It was no longer crucial if it was completely factual, distorted, or overstated. Whether it was completely true or not, distorted or overstated, the harm was completed already. Now, public shame has entangled Jim's pride, reputation, and like the capo of Harlem, disgraced and humiliated in public. Camron was an expert at playing the bad guy. Cam has always included amusing emoticons, mysterious captions, or statements that appear to poke fun at Jim's whenever blogs discussed manhood topic. "Don't be angry," he urged, beneath one of his well-liked posts. "Me? I'm not doing it. I simply pressed play." Although Cam was praised by some for going too far, others claimed that fans loved it. Even those Chrissy said that she was not on the team. Certain, especially if they possess the potential to destroy objects and families, not to be broadcast. Finally, business circles were affected. Jim seemed to be worn out during arson's occurrence in New York, witnesses stated. He wasn't the outgoing individual he usually was. He stayed away from interviews, avoided the limelight, and scarcely grinned. Jim often thrived in the spotlight, but he now seemed to be a man, weighed down by betrayal. There were even claims that Jim departed mid-con at the time. Kay's name was sought to be mentioned. Conversation, the embarrassment was worse. Chrissy finds it painful. Each and every second of blogs looked into Cam's leak, making she is the hot topic for all the wrong reasons. Explanations, she couldn't escape the press. Chrissy was seen to be slipping. Jin's romance with Lady Harlem is exposed by Camron is on fire. Even those who once appreciated her strength and hip-hop's perseverance and devotion were now pondering whether she had participated in home the entire time. The disputes turned into warmer. It was Chrissy who accused Jim of abandoning her in her hour of need. She believed he was giving Cron the advantage, and permitting his former partner to govern the path of their connection. However, Jim had an alternative viewpoint. Chrissy had created a gap, since even Cam had something to reveal. A gap that was being used at the time to harm his reputation in public. I have no concept of how it feels to step outside and be greeted by everyone's blank staircase. During a furious dispute, Jim, he apparently became angry. Chrissy had been faithful for many years, so those remarks were especially painful. Now, even Jim had his doubts. Even hip-hop and love producers were impacted. News spread that VH1 was hastily deciding whether or not to incorporate this actual problem in the plot of the next season. Drama is what the main focus of reality TV, and Camron's The Leak was flawless. But Jim had no curiosity. Others close to he wanted nothing to do with him. Cameras back then? There was no narrative. In life, amidst millions of people, Lion was a nightmare realized. But fans couldn't quit making assumptions about Twitter and Instagram. There were heated disagreements. Cam was accused by some, who said that Chrissy was the target of his anger because he harbored a bitter vengeance against former Dipsets. Others pointed the finger at Chrissy, saying that her history had at last produced her. Additionally, a shockingly high Jim was blamed by a percentage, asserting that he should have understood that Cam and Chrissy weren't completely reliable. It's the only topic on which everyone agreed with. In the tale of Jim and Chrissy was the most thrilling chapter thus far. On TV, everyone had seen them fight, weep, part, and make amends. However, this time seems to have changed. The pain this time, it wasn't just a story point. It was genuine. Furthermore, Jim's silent. And his hesitation to defend right away, Chrissy made a lot of people think that the partnership may be about to a conclusion. The streets became alive with reports that Jim, depending on others. Beyond his network of relationships and more time spent with the former Dipset colleagues. After over 20 years of ups and downs, with some whispering that Jim was considering cutting off all contact with Christy, he's exhausted. As said by one, he also made sacrifices as an insider. Too much for too long. The last straw was this disclosure. However, Chrissy wasn't. I'm not going to take that lightly. She was remaining optimistic that she and Jim could conquer the stress and embarrassment. She had stood beside him through difficult and skinny, and she wasn't planning on assuming that current is the source of the separation. We've been through worse, she said. Purportedly told a friend, a dot. Was this a betrayal that no couple should experience? Could you endure it till the end of the week? Or had they really gone through worse? Jim was clearly moving farther away. Kane was enjoying each and every second of the chaos he had unleashed. And Chrissy was clearly desperate. There was conflict in Harlem. The internet was divided. Popcorn was being consumed by the sector. While observing, the query that pervaded everything was simple, but harsh. Would Jim Jones eventually, would he back Chrissy or interrupt her? Her through her embarrassment again? The answer remained a mystery, but there was no doubt about that. It wasn't the story's conclusion. It was obvious. When the dust had settled around Jim Jones, Chrissy and Camron's leak Lampkin would change forever. The two that was formerly thought to be at the height of hip-hop fervor, they were in danger now. Their individual blogs reported on the clashes. Gossip websites, podcasts, and the around Jim. The volume of the noise rose. While he was silent, behind closed doors, Jim was struggling with emotions he had repressed. Years. He made a sacrifice. Relationships, career growth, and perhaps even his pride for Chrissy's joy for a long time. But Camron has to face a challenging reality as a consequence of his revelation. Maybe loyalty wasn't enough on its own? Enough. Maybe love, however, too intense to bear when everyone was anticipating your failure. Chrissy yet was unwilling to give in. Defeat. She knew the harsh characteristics of the internet. And that Cam had accomplished a noteworthy triumph by damaging her reputation. Jim's quiet was worse than the spill. However, she had seen him defend her and placed everyone in their appropriate location for many years. However, this time she felt abandoned. She no longer merely fought Camron, Mama Jones, and the media. She was fighting the guy she thought would be there for her through everything. When Jim returned home one night after being away, it was the tipping point for days. As soon as he stepped inside, Chrissy spoke, her voice trembling with rage and sorrow. Considering everything we've been together, do you truly believe you can just get away from me? She said, demand. Jim gave a headshake and obviously dropped his keys on the table, exhausted. Leaving isn't the point. Regarding identifying what is and is not genuine, Chrissy suffered more severe injuries from such claims as opposed to Cam's entire leak. She had fought for Jim's rights, years of commitment, on hip-hop and love. She even asked him to marry her. In spite of the fluctuations, she believed their love was turned on. But now Jim had his doubts, the very foundation of their relationship. According to insiders, Jim had previously been living somewhere different and far from the chaos. In Harlem, and there were reports he was considering relocating permanently. Regarding Chrissy, this was reminiscent of the past. Each time she thought marriage was impending, they were torn off by something. Mama Jones, Camron's leak, or disputes at work. The pain was also felt. This time, deep to repair. Meanwhile, Cam kept stoking the flames. He never specifically referred to as Chrissy or Jim, although everyone knew who he was talking about. Two and his supporters inspired him to. It's the truth, naming him Killer Cam. He ridiculed Jim for not talking to anyone. Live on Instagram stating things such as "the loudest ones always go," which is funny. Silent when the truth is revealed. Even fans of Dipset were split. Some people thought the fraternity had been betrayed by Cam by incorporating Jim's private life into the spotlight, whereas others said that Jim had spent years picking Chrissy over the crew earlier, and this was all karma. A few denounced him for destroying a relationship to resolve old scores. Going full circle, whatever one thing was certain, one's thoughts. The story had been drastically altered by Cam. Everybody, yes, Jim and Chrissy had to make their own decisions. Chrissy picked up the fragments and discovered the humiliation is unacceptable. As stated by friends, she ceased to go out and avoided public events, cameras, and steer clear of stares, murmurs, and constant inquiries. Her phone rang every time. She readied herself for another. Title: an additional blog post that would examine her life. Jim, on the nonetheless, was processing in a different way. Additionally, rather than sulking over, he immersed himself in the rumors studio. His passion had always been music, counseling, and now with her blazing a disposition that once required deference. She felt vulnerable, helpless, and powerless. According to those close to him, there was a bitterness in his new tracks that had never been there. He wasn't merely no more rapping around the streets. Even if everything is crumbling around, it was his way out. But it was also his pain, remained visible in the booth. Jim's final conversation, where he didn't particularly deal with Cam's leak, was a pivotal moment in his loss-themed rapping, loyalty as well as treachery. On occasion, the big people you think will support you are the "I'm not here to prove anything to anyone." In reference to the same individuals, he said, "Who is going to stick the knife first? I'm here to maintain my tranquility." Fans examined immediately, pondering whether he was speaking of Cam. Every word is correct. Aside, unsure if he was talking about Cam, the interview caused her distress. And she had assumed Jim would spend some time talk to Chrissy or Chrissy himself. The internet was seething with uncertainty. However, one thing was evident. Jim wasn't in a hurry to repair the relationship that he had previously been defined for Chrissy. He had the opportunity to protect her, to inform the realm in which their love existed, unwavering in spite of everything Cam had exposed. However, he spoke as though he seemed prepared to continue, as though he had ultimately accepted the reality that some chapters had to be concluded and the fallout continued. At a different live Mama Jones stream, who was never interested in back down, said in a small way that a mother may simply know. She said supporters she had consistently cautioned Jim regarding Chrissy, and the reality was outside. Fans laughed, but Chrissy was in discomfort because, in addition to appear stupid in front of the world, additionally, she had given it her all. Criticized the satisfaction of being right. Jim indeed Jones had departed, but not with a powerful statement. Not in a dramatic way scenario of breakup, but in silence, separation, and a lack that was more stronger than words. Cam kept on prosper in the chaos, and the most evident was disengagement. Indication that he was done with a man yet who had previously fought in his affection. He was always an expert at dominant stories. And this time he had established himself as the supreme puppet master in a Harlem-based drama as well as Flames. His fan base grew, his streams rushed, and his name appeared once more, dominating news reports. The story wasn't Chrissy about entertainment. It was two individuals who have spent more than 2 decades together before it collapsed. In front of millions of people, separated. Jim found it difficult to relax. Chrissy got into an argument. To remain united, and eventually came as fans reflected on the narrative. Numerous couldn't resist wondering if this was actually the end. Ultimately, Jim and Chrissy has persevered through countless conflicts. Previously, but it felt different this time. The catastrophic disclosure had accomplished more than harm the tie that was used to make them irreconcilable. There was no doubt about that. Camron's disclosure will be remembered as one of hip-hop's most unforgettable moments. History of rumors. This time, the injury wasn't limited to them. It took place between them, with the whole world observing. It wasn't solely about beef, music, or even antique diptych drama. When Jim Jones departed, Harlem found the hard truth. Occasionally, those closest to you are the people who could cause you the greatest harm. It was about loyalty, love, betrayal, and how much it costs to live in the spotlight. If you believed that this drama was, I swear it's just the beginning. Clicking the subscribe button is essential. Turn on the notification bell and share your ideas in a comment. Which side do you support? Jim, Chrissy, or Cam? Please remember to hit like on this video so that other people can take part in the conversation and continue to pay attention, since we have much more